the extension of Biden's sort of like 1993 politics seems to be operative here. I think Bill Clinton, his first sort of military attack, I think was on Iraq, if I'm not mistaken, in like maybe a year out from his first reelection. I think maybe it was earlier, maybe it was halfway through his first administration. But there is definitely a sense of like, because the other thing that Biden is risking here, it seems to me, and I think you're absolutely right. And again, this is sort of the crass political talk of this. Like obviously this is the morality of this, I think, is pretty clear to me. Or I should say the immorality. But from a just a political calculation, the other aspect of this is that if you look at the charts of like the cost of shipping containers has shot up through the roof in the past 2 weeks, and this is like at a time where the inflation numbers, and I think you tweeted this out the other day. The inflation is still weighing incredibly heavily on the American public, and the idea that you're going to trade Israel's ability to sort of like ceaselessly kill civilians for inflation, for use of military, a widening conflict, for undermining your own sort of like a political coalition. It is beyond baffling. And usually in these instances, it's just like incompetence. I think they really don't understand how this era is fundamentally different, at least in terms of like people under the age of 40, it seems to me.
Right. Which is a lot of people. I mean, it's not just, young lefty people like me. It's just like, I think the American public in general has changed. I wonder about the extent to which Biden can perceive that. But I also think part of what's happening here is that Biden really does himself as an individual have a real history of being very, very pro-Israel. I think it's part of who he thinks he is as a politician. I think that backing Israel is something he thinks is sort of fundamentally important to him. I think Frank Thor's book got at this a little bit, The Last Politician. He talks about the extent to which, since the 1970s, Biden has adopted this as a core part of his political brand. A lot of things have changed about Joe Biden. As repealed as a change elected, that has not fundamentally changed in any way. And so that might be part of what's going on here too. It's hard to understand otherwise, for the reasons you're talking about. It's not a pure political self-preservation why he'd be so committed to the course that he's on without any real sign that he's thinking about changing very much.
And it also undercuts almost like the primary narrative of his reelection campaign, which is that Donald Trump represents an existential threat to the United States, project, as it were. And it seems like Biden is willing. I mean, it has like a sort of like a double impact, right? Because it's demoralizing for people who even accept that premise, because Biden is fundamentally undercutting that project with his sort of, like you say, I think it is. I mean, it's even, I don't even know if you can call it ideological. It's in terms of, it is so strident.
Trump's bragging today about how he's saying that, they used to say I would cause World War III. Now look at Biden. If I come into office, we're going to end all the wars. And like, obviously that's a silly thing for him to say. This is the guy that struck Soleimani, and I have no faith that he would be any better than Biden on this, but he sees it politically as an opportunity for him to differentiate himself. And to Sam's point, like Biden, his proposition is, I'm the stabilizing candidate. I'm going to bring us back to a moment of peace, of stability, and I'm the empathy candidate. And in his support of Israel's campaign of mass killing in Gaza, that is a complete differentiate. That's not compatible with that framing.
No, I think that's right, and it's just going to drag on and on and on. And politically, the best thing for Biden would be a ceasefire. I mean, imagine that, like being the president who managed to end the conflict rather than somebody who sort of fuels the flames and has it drag on. I think it seems like for the next several months. I don't know what Israel's objectives are. There were these stories, even in the Wall Street Journal from a few months ago, about how American officials behind the scenes were troubled by the extent to which there was no plan. There just wasn't any kind of sense of, even if you would manage to root out Hamas and what you're imagining is going to happen, what does the post Hamas Gaza look like? How do you stabilize things? Who's the authority there? There was never a plan. And so this thing is going to continue being a ball of chaos for the foreseeable future. And I do think that the best thing, even politically for Biden, will be to wind things down and to make it look like he's brought stability to the situation rather than exacerbated it. Right now, I think he looks ineffectual. He's backing a war that doesn't seem to be achieving any of its, ostensible objectives. Thousands and thousands of people are being killed. We're seeing all these images of children without limbs. We now have this trial going on. South Africa brings genocide charges against Israel before the international community. None of this looks good. None of this seems like it's building up Biden's image of this, as you said, like this statesman who's going to bring order and stability to the world stage. It all seems like things are kind of flaming out of control in ways that I don't know. Biden doesn't seem responsive to and doesn't seem to really care enough to stop.
I want to get to that trial in The Hague in just a second, but what happens if the Houthis, who again, they've been subject to bombing campaigns by the Saudis for literally nearly a decade.
Yep.
So it seems to me that if there's anybody, any group in the world at this point that you're not going to deter from their agenda by aerial bombardment, it would be the Houthis at this point, right? And so what happens when they don't stop? Like what happens? Because either this coalition begins to sort of ramp up what they're doing, or they end up looking like they're ineffectual, and this coalition of 20, U.S. allies is essentially rendered ineffectual by the Houthis. I mean, what happens in this instance?
Well, who knows? I mean, I think you could say the same thing about Hamas itself, honestly. I mean, like, if we haven't learned the lesson that you cannot bomb these people into compliance, these kind of non-state or kind of non-traditional adversaries who have like real deep-seated grievances against the West, against American power. Look, if we haven't learned that you can't bomb your way to a solution in Middle Eastern conflict, I don't know when we're going to learn it. I don't think that at the end of this thing, people in Gaza are going to be more positively disposed to the Israeli state and less into Hamas at the end of this, partially because they've been so brutalized with what's going on. Similarly, the Houthis, as you said, have demonstrated a real resolve over years and years and years of very intense bombing backed by the West. I don't know when we're going to learn the lesson that these groups are to be, the conventional conflict is never going to be the solution here. And I'm not a foreign policy expert, I'm not a geopolitical expert. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what the alternatives are, but it should be clear to us that this is not going to work.
Right.
And it's worth pursuing other avenues for bringing things to settlement.
Let's